Okay, so welcome back. We had a week off last week. Life got in the way for both of us, too busy. So we're back here, ready to dive into this week's training plan and a question on trainers, probably the most asked question out there in the running world. Anyway, how's your week been, Fletch?
It's been good. It's been good. As you know, we're gearing up towards launching the app, so it's all coming to a head. Everything's coming to one. Training wise, I've actually got back into my own training, God forbid. And yeah, so it's been good to sort of dust the cobwebs off a lot.
Very good. Well, on another project, I'm mid-app release, so I will have, if I look very stressed halfway through there, something's gone wrong. So yeah, we're on the back of, I suppose I'm on a bit of an easier week at the moment. But we can dive into that in a minute.
Yeah.
So there we are. So what do we have in store for this week?
That is a very good question. I'm just logging myself into the dashboard.
I think, finished last, I suppose we didn't touch on last week. So last week was quite a heavy week and ended with quite a long weekend, a 25K run with sort of descending 5 kilometer, not descending downhill, descending splits for 5 kilometers each. Which is a great workout, but quite punchy. And then Sunday was a long, sort of 30K run off the back of that. So that was quite a bullish end to the week. Monday and Tuesday were off, and then this morning was the first of the heat sessions. So I turned a few fan heaters on in my sort of makeshift gym, and we tried to get it hot.
Love it. Yeah. And kind of like context for the guys listening in, we did a little bit of the sort of weather prediction stuff and how looking at what it's going to be like over in the Daytona Beach and mid to upper 20s, maybe descending down to the lower 20s. So it's worth doing some heat training now. 2-week protocol is what we were aiming for. So it's not going to be a crazy long and a large amount of heat training. Actually, you get quite quick responses, probably one of the quickest responses we can actually facilitate when it comes to training. So nice and short, sharp, some intensity work in the heat, and we reap the rewards.
Yeah. Well, I think, and at some point, maybe not today, but we can touch on, because heat training has a fairly big impact just for normal training, right? It's one of the sort of biggest bang for your buck sessions or period sets of sessions you can do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, I probably prefer it to altitude training. One, there's similar benefits, not obviously all of them, but there's similar benefits. The main one being plasma expansion. So you get more blood effectively because the body goes, well, can't keep losing that amount of fluid. Therefore, I'll increase the amount of plasma we have. That's where your sweat comes from, is blood plasma. So whether this is blood, sweat, and tears, technically speaking, it's blood, and tears, which is also tears. So it's just blood, and blood, technically.
Yeah.
So the fun part of it is once you increase your blood plasma expansion, or when your plasma expands, you get more of it. There is naturally an offset where you do increase your red blood cell count as well. So you don't get as much of an EPO effect as you do from altitude or anything else extracurricular, but you do get a small amount of it because in order to produce new red blood cells, your kidneys have to release EPO. So, right. And the thing about heat training is everyone responds in a predictable fashion, reasonably predictable fashion. Whereas with altitude training, it's very individualized. Some people can go to places like Font Romeu, and I think it's like 1,800 meters or 2,000 meters. And some people don't get any response at all because they need to go higher. Other people get the perfect response. Other people actually, they've got to go lower down because they're just not acclimatized or genetically not able to cope with that kind of altitude. I think heat training is one, you can do it all year round, relatively, but you also can predict outcomes a little bit more efficiently as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's slightly easier to set up. You can just turn some heaters on or put some extra clothes on, and off you go. Whereas finding a mountain is a bit more geography dependent.
Exactly. Unless you've got like a pressurized room in your house somewhere. Yeah, no, exactly that. And the old school methods of like boxers, I grew up in combat sports. We would put bin bags on and go for a run to cut weight. When actually all we were looking to do was increase core temperature. And off that core temperature, if we did that relatively regularly, not in a this is like a massive caveat and a pinch of salt to this whole conversation, but we would get actually quite a lot of endurance effect off the back of that. And Dave, a guy who's sort of looking at implementing his own training into this, who now coaches for us, a guy called George, he basically wore a hazmat suit for some of his easy runs because it was like no leakage of heat or of humidity. So yeah, it works.
Yeah. Well, we did it this morning. I turned the heaters on and I managed to get my little kind of cupboard that I've got a treadmill in up to about 30 degrees. So,
Boom. There you go. There you go. And it kind of rounded off, where we're starting. We're about 3 weeks out now. So I can show everyone on this tab. Basically, we're kind of bringing it towards now. We're just entering in mid week 36. We've got week 37 and week 38 to go in the race happening at the end of week 38. So technically we're 3 weeks out. So this counts as race week, which is part of the taper. I think people would tend to go 2 weeks before race week. Then it's tapering time. Race week counts as part of the taper, but it's a nice opportunity to get some stress in here. But where you were mentioning, it might be worth mentioning as well that we did have a relatively big weekend just happened with a 55k done and with pace work as well, and the body was like, I'm quite tired, and my foot and my hip and everything else is just kind of like they're just vocalizing their opinion. So again, we're going to pull back on volume, but we can still get a training effect with the heat. So that's kind of where we can pull different levers to get different effects. And so that's kind of where we can do this now, even though we would like it to be a big week of training. Normally, we can still make it a big week worth of stress. And then week 37, we could chop it right down. Week 38, we chop it right down and we're good to go.
Yeah, I think I messaged you on Monday morning just saying, I feel like I'm not broken, but I'm definitely like starting to feel like that was, the build of the last few weeks was sort of starting to make itself felt, and rather than just ignore it, it was like and it was kind of simple. You just said, right, take 2 days off, not one. So, and here we are.
And here we are straight back into our double day again. And we've reduced the volume of the threshold session this morning. So that was 1 rep less, so 3K less, which is quite a large chunk of time when we're looking at like an overall picture, but we've added another 8-minute rep to the interval session. So we've pulled back a lot of duration and added an extra punch of intensity in there.
Cheeky. I'd not spotted that. I hadn't programmed my watch for this afternoon yet. So, okay, right. You got me there. Yeah. I mean, I did that this morning. I did it on a treadmill and it was like 4-minute pace, but you definitely, I suppose it was one session less rather, one interval less. But the pace on the treadmill it's not as hard as holding the pace on the road.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's where some people could probably benefit from using treadmills more often, in that it's a great way of just sticking to a pace. It's a great way of being able to build your confidence up around speed and know what it is rather than just go really fast for 1 minute and then look back and go, oh, that was 3:25 pace. And then have to go, oh, what does that actually mean? How does that play out over a longer term and so on? So treadmills are a great tool.
So is this afternoon session, is that in the heat as well, or am I out and about? Mine is absolutely freezing outside, so I'll happily do it on the treadmill.
Well, this is a really cool part of the programming now, because technically speaking, we could do it in the heat, and there's some really good evidence around interval training in the heat being a very strong stressor, which obviously makes sense. It is. And then going and jumping into like a jacuzzi or something afterwards actually keeps the heat stress going and actually helps improve the endurance effect quite a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily say it needs to be in the heat, but if you want to give it a go in the heat, we might just have to reduce the pace down a little bit and sort of buckle around that sort of 4-minute a K. But we can give it a go and see how you feel. And then we can just make sure that we're not going too hard on the following day. Even we just pull back another easy day and just go, cool, that's another recovery day in there. Let's go save it for another bigger weekend. We can push it to 30-30 and just sort of maximize recovery in between work now.
That's fine. Well, I'll give it a go on the treadmill. And I think, like you say, that there's something about, I said it, I think last time, that hitting that high pace is a bit, when I was doing lots of downhill intervals, I definitely felt that just the the ability to go that fast downhill had an impact on the ability to hit the pace on the flat. And so I feel like some 345s on the treadmill will just help that, I guess, leg speed and sort of coordination stuff all come together.
100%, 100%. And I think that's kind of where you said before about sort of the end of a long run, still being able to hold those speeds. And it's just about those interval sessions are really building that capacity to get that engine working for a longer distance and at higher speeds,
Yeah.
leaving
Yeah, I
that tank
think
available.
because that was I think it was last week actually. Wednesday I went out in the morning and it was, early and dark and wet and all the rest of it. And I was kind of not hitting 4 minutes. I was more like 4:10 maybe, or sub 4:10, but certainly not feeling like I was hitting 4 minutes kind of well. And then I went out on the Saturday and I'm doing, the end of a 25K run and I'm hitting the same pace on, um, after 20 kilometers, so it's kind
Yeah.
of like there's something kind of crazy about all that when you, and I guess a bit of that's the day and how you feel and all the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's also something to be said for all this work we did around like the lower end of things, like the lactate threshold stuff, and being able to work at relatively high levels, but still sparing our glycogen stores. Um, we know that you've got this incredible engine, but with people with big engines, it tends to take them a little bit of time to get up to those levels. And so by going slow and progressively working through the gears, it gives our body time just to go back to what's economical, what it can sustain, and the cogs have turned and they're all good to go. That saves
So you're
all that glycogen stuff for later on.
you're basically saying I need a 20K warm up.
Well, and on a 100-mile run, you've got it.
Yeah, yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I joked about that Paris run, like having to kind of, go hard from the start for 10K. I was like, this is a bit of an alien
Yeah,
experience.
but I think that for those shorter races, people really do underestimate the warm up side of things, and I think a lot of runners would shy away from working hard during a warm up so that they're like saving their energy for the run.
Yeah,
When actually what they're doing is potentially eating into their reserves by not warming up too early because it takes them too long to get up to pace
right.
from an aerobic perspective. By actually working a bit harder during the warm up, giving yourself quite a bit of time off in between, like for a park run, for example, 5K, turning up half an hour early, alien to most people, and going through a 10-minute progressive warm up with a punchy finish, rides, fast sprint or something, and then 20 minutes of just ambling around, getting yourself mentally ready, maybe having a quick gel or something, swishing around the mouth and go. That would be considered bang on. Most people rock up from the car, straight onto the start line, go.
Yeah,
And there's no priming, there's no system preparation at all.
yeah. Well, I can acknowledge that for certain. That's why I don't do park runs. I don't like warming up. At 100 miles, you've got the first half to get ready, and then you can think about it. Very good. So then the weekend looks similar. I think it was the same 25 and 30. I think.
Exactly. I'm going to kind of see how the heat stuff has gone this week before we start manipulating it. We added in an extra rep for this one where it was then, but this is like a very traditional progression runs 5K, 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 going down through the pacing, ending on a 4:15. And it's kind of like it's training the body and brain to, as you kind of just said, start slow, go through the gears, and feel the rhythm. Like you are codename metronome in that you just be able to hit those speeds. It's, from my perspective, that is the skill of running. Putting left foot in front of the other one is just something you'll get better at by doing it. But
Yeah.
understanding how fast you're going and how far you have left and what's coming up terrain wise and how do you adapt pace accordingly. That's the skill of running. And this is kind of where it comes into that.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, this is one of my most. I mean, it's like it's just such a great. It's a favorite workout. Like you set out, and it's like it's not too onerous at the beginning, and okay, you've added, you snuck in an extra 5K last time, but luckily at the beginning, not the end. But you go out, oh, it's all right, and you kind of, and because there's something actually about the fact that they're 5K chunks, they're not they don't feel like they're kind of hitting the gas for like a hard interval. It's just this kind of progressive, progressive run. But at the end of it, you're like, and okay, everyone's pace will be different, and everyone's kind of splits will be need to target them. But that progression up, and you don't feel like you're dying at the last bit, but you feel like that is just like such a solid workout. And because you've just sort of built through it, I think it sort of accumulates, and you sort of mentally and physically at the start, you've got this kind of slight mental, I've got this big thing coming, but I don't, but so I've got to think about it. I can't just plod along and ignore it. So you kind of, you're conscious of it, and then you kind of execute it with these increments, which they're not massive leaps, they're not like a 30-second increment, they're 15. So it's kind of okay. And, you can make sure, I don't know, I like to hit the averages to within 1 second or so.
Literally.
But it's such a great kind of, such a great kind of workout. So yeah.
No, you've definitely have written the rule book on what pacing can be like when it comes to these things. Where like
I was a bit quick at the beginning there.
You got a bit overzealous in the beginning, so we starting to rein you in now, and you don't like it. But how these paces will play out over time, over that 5K. Bear in mind, this is actual real data from Strava. This is not what was written down earlier. That ability to feel the gear changes is really important, especially when it comes to racing. If you then get caught up with somebody else who has got a different plan to you, and you're like, oh man, they're pushing on, but I know how that feels. I won't be able to sustain that for ... Or this person actually is pulling back a lot more than I would like to be here. I know I can carry on at this speed for a bit. I say, brilliant. I'm on a different trajectory to you guys. Have a great time. I'll see you at the finish line, halfway point, or wherever. Knowing your own body is really important.
Yeah, and the confidence you get from that, like you say, it's like, I know well, my race is less so this sort of distance, but pace rather, but knowing, okay, I could hold this for 5 minutes or for 5K or 10K, and just that comprehension of your ability is really, really useful. So
definitely. Yeah, the progression runs is a lovely session. It takes a long time to be able to get it and to be able to lock in. But once you're able to switch gears and feel those changes, it's a lovely run.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff. So should we tackle our question? It's it's a question about trainers. So here we go. So how important are the right trainers to train in where racing for the lead up to a race of this kind of distance? I think referring to my race there. Box fresh or worn in to ensure the feet are in good shape for the 100 feet, or shoes are in good shape for 100 miles. Yeah. How important is that whole kind of trainer choice? New, old, I say old, but new, worn in, and all the rest of it. So
yeah,
I'll let you start, and then I'll have my layperson's approach to train.
So we just kind of wrote something similar to this in the Sunday Times magazine just recently. So the premise of footwear is quite different now to what it was like 10 years ago, in that there's this technology within the shoe now that actually does have an effect, whereas before it was basically what color do you like and how does it feel. Now you do have to consider like the plate and the foam stack height and how these things the rocker angles and so on. For the 100 miler, the first part of the question is boxed fresh or worn in. I would probably say always worn in is good. With these new shoes, they don't wear very well if you do too much in them. So a lot of the technology is actually within the foam, not the carbon plate. That's where most of the energy return actually happens. The carbon plate helps quite a bit, but without the foam, it would almost be detrimental. So that foam deteriorates over time. And the big part of it is you need to have worn the shoe enough to know that you're not rubbing in certain areas and it's comfortable, and especially if it's a new model you haven't worn before, how do you like the shoelaces tied, and all these kind of things that kind of undo you over 100 miles. It's probably not bad over a 5K because it's over in 17 to 35 minutes, somewhere around there. Whereas 100 miles can be between 2 days
a long time.
Exactly. So what rubs on a 20K run is going to be like A&E by the end of 100 miles. So you need to have understood those things. I think there's like the optimal way of doing it would be that you have maybe 2 or 3 pairs of the race shoe that you want to wear, and you've bought them at the beginning of your training camp, and you've worn them through several iterations of your training, through your progressive long runs into big volume weeks using them, and then you unbox the next pair when the next one pair break in or break through, and then you've then got a pair that you've got ready for race day, which you've worn 2 or 3 times just to make sure that they are of the same. Because quality assurance is not particularly great with footwear. Obviously, the molds are the same, but the stitching and where these stitches kind of unhook from, and that's what creates a lot of the blisters is the seamstry rather than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Then you've
think
got go on.
sorry, I was just gonna say on that, that was for Novacoli, I had that approach with it was a new shoe, a new Hoka, and I switched to it in the lead up. And as I got closer, I was like, basically bought a second pair because I was like, I'm just going to rotate through this thing. But you definitely think about it more when you know you're putting your feet in them for that long. You kind of, because it doesn't take much for something to be, that's a race finishing problem. They are, and if you think about these long races, I'll put stuff ahead in a drop bag. So I might put a pair of trainers at like another pair of trainers that I might have access to, let's say 60 miles. But if you've got a problem after 20 miles, you've got to get through 40 miles before you get to that pair of trainers. And then if you go past that aid station and you're like, well, I didn't change my trainers, you've got another 40 miles of that preying on your mind. So they're big, they're bigger, much bigger decisions than you kind of think about than in many other cases.
No, most definitely. And I think that's where ultra marathons are a lot less about fitness and a lot more around logistics and your kit and how it's fitting. Like you said, footwear, one thing, slight tangent off, like the running vest you use, the t-shirts you're wearing, the shorts that you got on, the leggings you normally use, all these things have to have been tried and tested in some fashion before you get on the start line, because that little scratch that happens at mile 3, you're like, oh man, there's a label sticking out in my shorts or whatever. By the end of mile 80, that's going to be like a raging siren going off in your head. So yeah, footwear wise, I would always say wear your shoes in a little bit at least before racing in them, especially over longer distances. Technology wise, depends on what you're racing on. So if you're doing a trail running event, I'm not, to my current knowledge, not clear whether the carbon plates have much of an effect on trail running. I mean, technically speaking, they probably should do, but we don't know by how much or if it's worth it for the instability that you tend to get with these super shoes. What we've now coined as ergogenic shoes. Yeah, because there's a few people trying to change the term. And what was the other part of the question again?
Yeah, well, mainly that the kind of the right trainers, I suppose.
Right
so
trainers.
That's quite a big range.
Yeah.
And I guess in that is really, probably a part of that is this whole carbon or no carbon or a plate rather, not just carbon, and and whether to do it. And I think I'm going to get it on record now because you basically granted me permission to buy a new.
Don't try and get me in trouble here.
You definitely. First of all, I got a note from Strava
Scapegoat.
saying, Strava said you've worn these trainers for however many kilometers, and I was like, okay, well, that's basically permission. So, and then you helped me get over my retail hurdle yesterday. So, but yeah, but my question or part to that was, in my head I had thought or sort of assumed that the super shoe kind of approach was much more a shoe that you had to, I guess, sort of load up, like kind of run hard in, whereas more traditional, I guess, a sort of softer, if that's right, sort of plush or sort of less kind of less aggressive shoe maybe was a better approach in the kind of ultras. And that said, and Novacoli shoes were the first pair with a carbon plate I'd ever tried, but they aren't, I wouldn't say they're that kind of more super shoe geometry. They don't have the kind of aggressive rocker and all that sort of stuff. They just had a plate. I think that was to offset their sort of a lot of foam in them. And they were kind of marketed much more as a kind of, this is a long distance fiber carbon shoe rather than a kind of race one. But yeah, we're with your guidance and an approval, which has been now caught on record. Yeah, we've got a pair of the more kind of super shoe type shoe arriving in the post. But yeah, my assumption was that was kind of for running fast, and you kind of slightly contradicted my layperson approach to that, and that helped me get over the line. So yeah, maybe give some background on that.
Science and retail meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a common misunderstanding that the super shoes or ergogenic footwear only work if you're a fast runner. Typically speaking, the biggest benefit of anything that requires recoil would be when you, like you said, you load it up. And the quicker you load things up, the faster the recoils. So a lot of the elite marathon runners who are breaking world records and stuff are like running at 21, 22 kilometers an hour in these things and weigh like 53 kilograms. In order to help you through a retail decision, I've dug out a couple of research papers that were looking into a few different speeds, and it wasn't necessarily all paces. Like the slowest they went down to was like 10 kilometers an hour. But from like an elite perspective, that's basically, I don't know, we'll be very careful with my terminology here, but it's not very hard or very stressful for them at all.
Yeah.
Versus for some people, that's the fastest marathon they can ever do, or fastest 10K they can ever do. And so it was quite a nice study that it did look at a range, and there was benefits across the entire range. So even people who are running at 10 kilometers an hour saw benefits from the footwear in the same way they were further up. The problem was the benefits did get bigger as they went faster. So it's not pointless. You won't get as much for a benefit. I would be really interested to see if they did the same study and corrected it for body mass. Because if you pace-wise, increasing speed is a great way of increasing force into the floor. And that's what creates the recoil. Well, what if we just put more mass on top of the footwear? And someone like ourselves who are near on like 90 kilograms, maybe 97, I'm going to put more force into the floor at 10 kilometers an hour than someone else is who weighs 70 kilograms. So if we correct for body mass, I think, I'm hypothesizing here, and would love to be proven in some fashion, that we may see bigger benefits from those slower paces than somebody else who was lighter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes physics-wise, that starts to make a bit of sense, doesn't it? So, yeah, I think it. I mean, we'll watch this space. I've got them arriving. Interestingly, I was looking to replace my older shoes, obviously, but I was looking to replace my older shoes, and the current my existing ones are not in. They aren't in stock. Right. I don't have a way of solving that problem. Apart from the primary problem, there is one, but it's in a horrible color, and that's like that's the overriding decision on all of this. No, but so I was like, well, what do I do? I've got a big race. I don't want to run these really old. They are now old. They were trained in before Nova Coli. They've been trained in a lot since. There's some distance in them. So it does becomes quite an important thing. So anyway, some new ones arriving. If they seem to be working, I'll get another pair, because you can't have. You've helpfully acknowledged that you should have a constant stream of these to to rotate them through.
Your wife's going to hate me on all levels now.
No, but it's what's that phrase? Forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah.
So So
well, I think to caveat the decision as well is that the kind of races that you've been taking part in, especially like the Daytona and the Nova Coli, they're not particularly technical ultras.
Yeah.
They're very much simplistic. Like they're either road races, and it's follow that path all the way to the end, or it's relatively flat. There's no like crazy technical descents and so on. So that's also what made us think maybe the more footwear might be a potential case here, in that the instability probably wouldn't fare up very well for a more technical race. But if we're looking to push the pace up because of the reduction in technicality, then this would make sense for a footwear change.
Yeah, and I think if we get, hopefully, well, see how they go and train in them between now and then, and make a decision in a week or so. But Badwater's the same. It's the road, and it's not technical. It's got many other challenges, but the terrain is, or the surface is flat. So the surface is flat, the elevation is not. But so well, there we are. If anyone needs
speed projects,
exactly.
So
exactly.
It was like just a massively long straight road for like 30 miles. Go.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm good at, that kind of mindless stuff. Hopefully we get there. So so if anyone needs new trainers, all you got to do is speak to Fletch. He can provide like at school, like an off games note. You can provide like a
permission
slip. New trainer. But it's you did do it. There was a thing in the Times, wasn't there? I'll try and find a link to it. That was out in the Sunday Times. I think it's online, about trainers and things that you were heavily quoted in.
Yeah,
We can we'll try and find a link to that. Put it on below the video.
Yeah, there's loads of spin-off topics you can go on with that, like, should I wear different shoes for easy runs, different shoes for intervals? Should I do different shoes for walking around the house? Like, footwear becomes like a multi-spectrum thing, which is a long topic on its own.
Yeah, I was going to say probably for a follow up question there. I think, but in summary, it's don't a well. Firstly, is never the number of people that turn up to a race and do something new on the day. I mean, it's like madness. But loads of people do that. I mean, you see it all the time, don't you? So never do that is the first bit of advice, but certainly not with shoes or something as critical as that. I suppose if you are really used to a particular style of shoe and you're always running in it, that's slightly different. That's not really, it's not quite the same, is it? But yeah, definitely race day, special surprises on race day is not the order of play.
No, we see it. So we did an event at the London Marathon a couple of years ago where we basically had a stand there and we were doing biomechanical assessments on people and stuff. And the amount of people that were buying new shoes at the convention in order to race on the following day. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I've worn the shoe before. Yeah, but why now? Why didn't you get like 3 weeks ago and like put them on and wear them around? Like, oh, it was like 25 pence off. Oh, great. Yeah, well done.
Yeah. No, it's been since the year dot, people turn up and think we'll do something special on race day. And you look at all the pros and long timers are like, if you've not tested it endlessly before race day, you don't touch it.
Yeah. Although you say that I was chatting to one of the elite runners, and they were going around the athlete area, and there was a couple of brands that were sort of popping up and giving things out. And one of them was a gel, and they were talking about sponsorship, and they were talking about like bringing them on board and so on. And like, oh, maybe you can use our gels in the race on the weekend. This is London Marathon. This person was looking to like do she's a female runner, 2:23, 2:22 for the marathon, and she took some gels that she'd never used before. Was like, yeah, I'll give them a go, because it was a sponsorship potential there, and it undid her race big time.
Yeah, well, I can imagine certainly gels. They've got well, maybe it might be an interesting topic for next week or week after to look at that kind of not kit, but kind of ultras and kit and preparation and what you do and what you don't do and some of the things, some of the things I do or some things you would recommend just in terms of that whole thing. Because I think it's the bit that people perhaps don't necessarily comprehend, that whole it's not 100 miles of running. It is 100 miles of running, but that's not what you spend your time thinking about. It's you spend your time thinking about everything else to basically not make a mistake in 100 miles of running. And so maybe some of that would be insightful or enough to put people off running 100 miles one or the other.
Love it.
Nice one. Okay, Fletch. Well, I will do the next session. I think I'll do it warm because it's cold outside. I don't like the cold, and then we'll make a plan for the weekend with that in mind.
Love it. Sounds good.
Nice one. All right, I will catch you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.